untying. And so the universe then has no choice. First attribute of the secret place. The secret place is a place of revelation. It makes you free because it awakens you and makes you consciously aware that everything that you thought was holding you is an illusion. Well, good evening, everybody. Good evening, good evening. And for those of you that have gathered here, welcome to the Emerge movement, this empowerment session that we are preparing to have tonight, a great conscious conversation as we continue to examine the nature of being. And we have been looking very closely and comprehensively at portals, doors, windows, and gates. And so I'm glad that you have tuned in and decided to join us on tonight, and that you are willing, ready, and excited to participate in this powerful, conscious, informative conversation that we'll be having tonight. Now, as I always do, I'm going to ask those of you that are on with me right now, go ahead and begin to share, and tag. Tag as many people as you possibly can and invite them to come over and be a part of the conversation. Those of you watching on YouTube, then you can hit the share button as well, and then copy the link and send it out via text message. You can send it to your group text, group chat, or wherever you like. And they'll be able to click on that link and tune in to the live broadcast just as you are. Those of you on Facebook, whether you're watching on the Emerge page, AIM Ministry page, on my personal page, take a moment and hit the share button and share it on your page, as well as in all of the other groups that you may be a part of, so that others are able to come and participate and be exposed to the level of teaching and conversation that we are having here on this broadcast. Do that for me right now. Tag as many people as you can. Let's try and build this audience out and get as many people involved in the conversation as we possibly can. Tonight's teaching will come to the last of the elements that vehicles that we have been discussing: portals, doors, windows, and now number 4, gates. And it's pretty extensive, so it's going to take a little bit of time to try and go through all of it, because there is one particular narrative and example given in scripture that I want to take some time and dissect a bit, because it absolutely exposes and gives us a detailed insight into the soul, or therefore the consciousness of man, the consciousness of humanity, and gives us kind of a roadmap from lower to higher consciousness, and how we make that trip, how we navigate that space. And so it's going to be really, really interesting and really detailed and intense. And I know that you will definitely enjoy it and learn and gain a lot from it. While I'm waiting for those of you who are sharing, thank you for doing so. Those of you who are tagging others, thank you for doing so as well. I want to remind all of you that Emerge is a movement. We are a virtual spiritual community that is empowering people on their journey towards spiritual wholeness, evolution, growth, and development. That our goal is to offer people an alternative who are tired of the brick and mortar church, tired of organized religion, and have found no solace or satisfaction in those places, but still want to have an intimate, growing, and evolving connection with the divinity of God that lives within them. They recognize that they are not a singularity in this world, but that they are intertwined and interconnected with all of humanity and all of the universe and nature, and that you want to be able to develop a closer, intimate relationship with the source, with God, with the divinity of God that lies within all of humanity. That's what Emerge is really about. That's the thrust. That's the main thrust of Emerge, is to help you to make that connection and to empower you as you are walking your own individualized path towards spiritual wholeness, development, and evolution, as you are growing and becoming more consciously aware of yourself and your greatness, your infinite power and limitless capacity for greatness. We want to offer you the tools that are necessary to help you to unlock your soul, to explore the greater parts of your being, so that you can become the highest, best version of yourself. That's what Emerge is about. We offer you something that no other organized religion is going to offer you, and that is uncut, unfiltered truth, without manipulation, without control, without hype, without trying to reel you into something, but offering you unfiltered, uncut truth. And then you decide what you want to do with that truth. I don't ascribe to the idea that I know everything, that I'm the smartest, wisest, most intelligent person in the world. But I give you the information that I have learned and gained and garnered over the years. And then I encourage you to not only listen, take notes, but investigate and research for yourself, to ask questions, get answers, and then question the answers. That's the key to your growth, your development. That is really the key to your finding your inner center, your peace, your core, is you asking questions. Anything that can't be questioned is not based in truth. Then get answers. I'm here to offer you as many answers as I can possibly offer you. But even after that, question the answers. Investigate for yourself. Seek out knowledge for yourself. Prove all things. Try everything. And only hold on to those things that serve you. Let me say it again. Prove all things. Try it all. Examine everything. And only hold on to those things, those principles, those practices, those ideologies or beliefs that serve you. If they don't serve you, then let them go. Everything is not for everybody. You get to choose what best serves you. This is not about me. I'm not ego tripping. It's about all of us growing and evolving and developing and becoming and being together as one unit, as a movement that can profoundly impact humanity and began to help to promote the idea of higher conscious living. It is distilling those ideas and conscious beliefs and truths down to practical tools that you can apply to your life that help you to live abundantly, prosperously, to live in an expansive space that makes your life exponentially better. That's what Emerge is all about. I encourage you to go and visit the website and check out more information and insight about Emerge. See what we're really about, what we're really our goals are. What our it's written in the description above the mission statement and the vision for Emerge, and really, but there's really more that's there on the website that takes you further in depth. I encourage you to click on the link in the description and go to the website and check it out for yourself. Then, after you've read everything and you've had an opportunity to digest it, then I ask you to consider becoming a partner with Emerge. What partnership involves, what it entails, well, that's written a little bit in the description above, but it is more detailed on the web page. I think that this is a good place for you to connect. We're a great community that's open to everybody, regardless of where you come from, what your experiences have been, what your cultural, environmental, racial background may be, what your sexual orientation may be, or what your religious or non religious experiences may have been. We welcome everyone from every stripe and status. It does not matter. I don't care if you were a practicing Christian, Buddhist, Hindu, or a Muslim, or even an atheist or agnostic. You are welcome to make connection here and to be a part of this family. I encourage you to consider it. Partner with us. And I know that that terminology, partnership, sometimes seems intimidating. It can even seem a little bit suspect and suspicious because there has been so much abuse through the years by those who claim to be spiritual leaders, teachers, and so on and so forth. And they use terms like partnership in order to manipulate people and to take advantage of them, gimmick them, trick them, and bleed them of their resources and their money. That's not what Emerge Partnership is about. It's absolutely not about that. If you are interested in knowing more in detail about what it means to be a partner, you're welcome to inbox me or shoot me an email at the email address that's written in the description above. I'll even put it on screen right now. You can email me at this email address and say, hey, listen, I want in, or I want to know more about what partnership entails. And I will send you out a full information packet with all the details laid out to you. I think that you will be pleasantly surprised to find that partnership with Emerge is more about your own benefit and growth than it is about mine or any other person. Is money involved? Sure. But it is involved in a way that you are given the liberty to give and the privilege and honor to give, to sow, or to tithe as you see fit, as you are led or unctioned to do so. It's no pressure, it's no push. No one's going to try and manipulate you or frighten you or scare you with curses and all this other kind of craziness and nonsense. It's an honor and privilege to be a giver. When you give, you act from the place of abundance. And when you begin to act from a place of abundance, then abundance automatically flows to you effortlessly. So you're able to give freely and support the work that we do. One thing is for certain, And I posted this yesterday. People invest in what they value. If you value the information, the teaching, you value the fellowship, the connection, then you have no problem investing in it and giving toward it. If you don't value it, then you won't. And people say, I can't afford this, afford that. The word afford literally means to make space for, to create room for. And everybody can afford whatever they choose to, because you get to decide whether you're going to make allowances for, make space for, make room for whatever you decide to do. We make decisions and choices every day about how we will invest our time, our talent, and our treasure. Okay? So, what you value, you are willing to invest in. The scripture teaches, one of the scriptures from the Bible says that wherever a man's heart is, that's where his treasure is also. Or maybe it says it the other way around, that where your treasure is, it demonstrates or reflects where your heart is. That what you value, what you care about, you're willing to invest in. And that's all I ask. That's all we all ask with Emerge. That if you value Emerge, you value the teaching that you're receiving, that you willingly, lovingly, cheerfully invest in it. Invest your time. Invest your skills, talents, abilities, and yes, your resources, money, and other things that you might be able to offer. That's all. That's it. Not gonna promise you new house, new car, 7 days, this is gonna happen. Nonsense. But I do know that there are laws that govern abundance and prosperity. And when you align yourself correctly and joyfully with those laws, then abundance and prosperity flow into you, and they flow into you effortlessly, continuously, perpetually. Okay? So, with that being said, let's get into it tonight. Let's get into it. Spiritual portals, doors, windows, and gates. Now, remember that I'm going to be watching the comments as much as I possibly can, so that I can answer any questions you have. No question is off limits. Okay, you can ask anything you want to ask, and I will address your questions. Nothing is off limits. Nothing. Okay, so make sure you comment your questions, or if you have a comment or input, insight, share that as well in the comments. This is a conversation, a dialogue. It's not a speech. So I want you to participate, and I want you to gain everything that you can from the conversation. I hope you have pencil, paper, or some kind of device or something that you're able to take notes with. If not, then when you come back and watch these teachings on the replay, you can do that and make notes, then write in your journal, so that you're able to gain more and more and more. Because scientists even show that we only retain about 10% of what we hear the first time, which says to me that you would have to listen to this at least 10 times to get everything out of it, to get 100% of it. Okay? So take notes and pay as close attention as you possibly can. So let's talk about it. We've been talking about spiritual portals, and then spiritual doors, spiritual windows, and spiritual gates. Now, we have covered pretty extensively portals and doors and windows. Tonight, I really want to give my full focus and attention to spiritual gates because it is pretty extensive. And so it's going to take a little bit of time, and I don't want to have to rush through it. I want to be able to take my time and walk you through. So I'm not going to review portals, doors, or windows. If you want that information, go back. And yes, I see you, Yvette. I see you. Go back and listen to the prior videos, and then you are welcome to email or inbox me your questions or comments that you have concerning it. I promise you I will address every email that comes or inbox that you send me. But tonight I want to solely really focus in on spiritual gates. Are y'all ready? Everybody ready? Yes, I see you. I see you. Okay, you're welcome. I see you. I'm my old classmate, Royal Cova. Good to see you, man. I'm glad you're on. All right. All right. So let's talk about it. What are spiritual gates? Gates are places where you encounter authorities that guard the entry to unknown or unconscious places and places of great significance, great knowledge, insight, revelation, and so forth. It is a threshold, okay? They are guarded in most cases symbolically, and we're talking about for those of you who do practice meditation, especially transcendental meditation, mindful meditation as well, some guided meditation. Those of you who practice meditation and prayer, that you're accustomed to seeing visions or entering a trans state and seeing images, visions, pictures, portraits of things. You will most often know that you are approaching a spiritual gate because you'll see images of things like lions, or even bulls or dragons, and in some cases dogs. Okay, not literal, of course. These are just images, common images that often appear as you are approaching a spiritual gate. Remember, they are guarded places within the full spectrum of the ether or the isness of God, the mind of God, that are places of great authority that we may not be fully conscious of. Usually we are unconscious of it. Remember that we are omniscient, all knowing, but not all conscious. All knowing, we have the knowing, an innate knowing within us because God is in us, through us, and as us. But that knowing is not always conscious, that we are not always conscious of everything that we know. You have what we call an intuitive nature, your intuition or instinct, that often guides you and directs you with a sensation or feelings that you don't even have the words to articulate, but there is a certain innate knowing within you, knowing that something is about to happen, knowing that having a premonition or prophetic unction about a thing, a knowing of how to do or perform a thing that you've never been, quote, taught to do. That awakening knowing inside of you that is innately loaded and coded within your spiritual DNA. That knowing lies within you, and that there are portions of that knowing that you are unconscious of, that house significant knowledge, revelation, insight that covers the entire spectrum of existence, not just humanity, but of existence. We understand that God is the source, the creator, the progenitor of all existence across every dimension throughout the multiverse. That all life and every creature that exists has its genesis in God, and that God is not localized in any one place but is omnipresent. And because we are the offspring of God, and we are one with God, we then are also likewise, as divine reflections of God, omnipresent, while being individualized, inhabiting these three-dimensional forms. What makes us divine beings is our ability to be individualized in a singular form while remaining omnipresent in every place at the same time. We are most conscious of where we are at this moment, this habitation. It is what we are conscious of because it has been the focus of our existence in this earth for as long as we have been here. Okay? It's what we are most conscious of. But because we are most conscious of it does not negate our existence in other dimensions, places, spaces, and time that we are unconscious of. Gates, spiritual gates, are those passageways, those entrances that allow us to become consciously aware of our presence and our knowing that we have formerly been unconscious of. It makes us consciously aware of the things that we have always known and the places we have always been, but for a period of time have been unconscious of. Gates, spiritual gates, are when you approach that threshold where you are about to step into an area of consciousness, of knowing, of understanding, of revelation or insight, into a part of your innate knowing and your omnipresence that you were not consciously aware of before. It is what what is most often called our higher consciousness. Let me say that again. It is what is often referred to as our higher consciousness. That is, it is that heavenly place, yes, not out in the sky by and by beyond Pluto, but it is that higher realm of consciousness where we become enlightened and aware of our innate knowing and being. It is when we become fully aware and fully conscious of the nature of our being. It is a progressive journey that we all embark upon throughout this iteration of our existence, and every iteration that follows. So it is not something that is accomplished in one fell swoop or even one lifetime, but it is an ever progressive unfolding, revealing, and uncovering that is spread out over various iterations of existence across dimensions and throughout the universe. Are you understanding what I'm saying? So these gates, these gateways, these thresholds are there. And as we begin to evolve and emerge and accelerate toward that innate knowing, as we spend time in the spiritual practice of prayer and meditation and fasting, along with the other keys to the universe that we've discussed before in some detail, you began to get visioning images, pictures, portraits within your conscious mind as you begin to approach those areas of your divine knowing. And they are most often represented by these, what some have titled spirit animals, but they're not necessarily animals per se in the sense of literal animals, but they are just animals that represent something. Lions, dragons, dogs, and bulls often are the animals that you will envision or you will see in your vision time, your meditation time, that transit state where when you that is an indicator or a red flag that you're about to enter a realm of consciousness that penetrates a part of your innate knowing in your spirit, that you're about to become consciously aware of something that you were not aware of before, that you're about to step into a realm of insight and understanding and revelation and conscious knowing, yes, that had before eluded you or had never been pursued. Are you following me so far? Okay? The lion, the dragon, the bull, the dog, not literal, but just common images. And they are often depicted in conjunction with these spiritual gates. Now, when we talk about these gates, I want to use one particular arena or narrative to really, because I think it best illustrates the detailed operation of this particular mechanism, structure, or vehicle that is used to elevate and your life and to help you in your evolutionary process. I want us to examine what John describes in the book of Revelation as the New Jerusalem. Now, again, remember that John has stepped through a portal and has been taken into a time and space that we call future, while still only equipped with the vocabulary of the time in which he was conscious of. So he is taking a first century vocabulary and stepping into an arena that involves 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, so on, first century uh, events while trying to describe it with a first century vocabulary. He sees things from a 21st century perspective, events that would unfold in our time, and he is trying to describe machinery, mechanisms, happening, events with a first century vocabulary that is void of the things that we use to describe our current events. Are you understanding what I'm saying? And so when he steps through this portal of time and space and looks into this time that we call future, many would call future, using his first century vocabulary, he encounters something and he describes it as New Jerusalem. Now, this tells us that it is not literal. This is not a literal city. It is not literally Jerusalem. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Okay? It is not literally a city. It is not literally Jerusalem, but that he is using the first century vocabulary and painting an allegorical picture of what it is that he is observing take place in his transitant state. While he is caught away through this portal and observing through a window these things as they began to unfold in front of him. Are you hearing what I'm saying? This is a perfect narrative and example because it involves all four of the vehicles that we have been discussing. First, there is an open door, and then, first John steps into a portal, then there is an open door, then he stands at a window and watches and observes objectively as he sees different events begin to unfold. And then he describes New Jerusalem. He describes a state of higher being, enlightenment, and consciousness in allegorical terms, putting in place three-dimensional natural objects to try and describe the spiritual experience that he's having in that place. Are y'all hearing what I'm saying? So he describes New Jerusalem as having 12 gates. Now, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, let's dispel the myth that this is talking about quote unquote heaven in the sense of a natural, tangible place, but it is talking about a state of consciousness, heaven, as a higher realm of conscious awareness. Okay? Because what he is about to describe, if it were indeed, as many religions, especially Christianity, ascribe to, as it being a literal place where you go and hang out, then think about the description. Streets that are made of gold and feasting on milk and honey, mansions littering the entire existence and the place that he's in. Long white robes, starry crowns, golden slippers. What does a spirit need with natural things? Remember, this is after you have transitioned out of this three-dimensional form and you are the purest of spirit, essence, vapor, air. Why would you need gold and slippers and crowns and robes and houses? So clearly, this is not literal. Spirits don't live in mansions unless it's a haunted house. spirits spirits don't live in mansions. They don't walk around with crowns on and slippers and robes. And what are you covering with the robe? And spirits certainly don't sit around eating milk and honey. Incidentally, have you ever tried milk and honey? Have you ever tasted that? Because for me, that's just not a good taste. Okay, but but spirits don't need to eat. So why are they feasting on milk and honey? What kind of feast should there be for spirits? Spirits walking around talking, "Ooh, I'm hungry. Ooh, let me go get me some of that milk and honey." Yeah, no, that hit the spot right there. Why in the world would spirits need natural food? Natural food is for human bodies. All of the things that are described are anthropomorphisms, allegories. That they have to be allegorical because they don't make literal sense. Are y'all with me so far? Okay, I know I might be upsetting some Christian people, especially those who are, deeply religiously Christian. Then it's like, oh, wait a minute now. I've been waiting to go to this golden city all my life. There's a city in the distance. I'm sorry to burst your bubble. There is no literal city. There is no literal city. That's right, I said it. This is a vision using first century vocabulary to describe something that he is seeing that is completely out of the time that he is most conscious of. And so he uses descriptive allegorical terms to try and describe what he is seeing. This applies, this city, this New Jerusalem, and we're going to go through it piece by piece, describes our higher consciousness. Let's examine. He first begins to tell us that this vision that he sees is of a city that is protected. Yes, a city, a dwelling place, a habitation that is protected. It is a fortified fortress, a place that is protected. Oh, honey milkshakes. I had high hopes of that city. I'm sorry to bust your bubble. Okay, I'm going to pause to answer questions. All right. Will we be able to see our family and friends after we transition from this three-dimensional world? Uh, you will not only see and know them, you will not only see them, but you will know them. But you will not know them as family and friends and loved ones or anything else. You will know them for who they truly are, which is another version of you, another soul. Are you understanding? Another individualized part of the whole, indistinguishable from the whole itself, that is God, the source of all things. So, all of the things that you associate with seeing family, loved ones, friends, don't apply because there are no emotions. I think I shared before about one of my encounters as I had an encounter with someone that I had known while they lived in the three-dimensional form and loved while they were in three-dimensional form. And I had an encounter to be able to speak with them after they had transitioned. And I, out of my own humanity, asked, "Do you miss me?" And they matter of factly said, "Miss you? No. How could I miss you?" Why? Because there are no emotions. So that kind of attachment doesn't exist. And then number two, you become more consciously aware of your oneness with the all of everything. That what they informed me was, how can I miss you when I am you, and you are me, and we are one. So I'm never away from you, and you never away from me. While I am absent from the physical form, I am present with you. Because to be absent from the body is to be present with God. And where is God? Every place, including in me, through me, and as me. And if God is in me and they are in God, then they are in me as well. They're just as much a part of me as I am a part of God. I hope that answers your question. Okay? So let's keep going. And in this teaching tonight, this conversation is going to be a bit extensive. So we're going to go over our normal hour. We're almost at an hour already. So bear with me, move with me through it. If you have to leave, I understand. But stick it out with me as long as you can, if you can. Okay? But I'm not going to hurry. I am not going to hurry through this. Okay? Yes, it is hard to detach from the feelings and emotions, and that's okay because that's a part of the human experience. Okay? You shouldn't even seek to detach from those feelings and emotions. Don't, because that's an integral part of the human experience. Okay? We have those accoutrements, if you will, for a very good reason. So don't feel like you need to detach or separate from them. But when you transition out of this form, there's no longer need for emotions. Okay? There's no need for emotions or any of the other human characteristics that we associate with life. All right. So let's keep going. He says, this state, that's exactly right. Uh, um, she says, wow, makes sense. Wow, we need feelings, emotions here to have the human experience. Exactly right. That's exactly right, Bianca. That's why we need those emotions. Okay? So he begins to describe this allegorical city, this higher state of consciousness, as a fortified place surrounded by 12 gates. And each gate is a single pearl. Pearls represent wisdom. Wisdom. Pearls are represented as, you've heard the terminology pearls of wisdom. It's a real it's a really good terminology or phrase or well, what's the word I'm looking for, but it's a good terminology because it is accurate. Representative in the spirit realm, pearls represent wisdom. So this place that is fortified, this consciousness, this rather higher consciousness that is fortified, is surrounded by gates made of wisdom. That means that as you walk through each of those gates, you are entering through a place or a gate that leads to wisdom, insight, understanding, revelation. Each gate represents wisdom, but it's not just any wisdom. Let's go a little bit deeper and further, okay? Because each gate is named after one of the 12 tribes of Israel and are divided into the directional locations of the universe. This is in Revelations 21. In Revelation 21, it talks about each of the gates represents one of the 12 tribes of Israel. And we're going to talk about that a little bit because you'll notice that in the description that's given in Revelation, it is the revised version, if you will, of the 12 tribes after certain tribes in the Old Testament were excluded and replaced. And I'll explain that in just a moment. But each of those 12 tribes, each of the individuals from those tribes, one guards each gate. They're named, those gates are named after those tribes. And each of those names represent a certain type of wisdom, insight, understanding, and revelation. So that as you go through that gate, you know this is the gate that leads to this wisdom, revelation, or understanding. This gate leads to this wisdom, revelation, or understanding, and as it corresponds to the name of that particular tribe. So let's talk about these 12 tribes now. The 12 tribes of Israel are derived from the Old Testament narrative concerning Jacob. Now, there's a whole lot of issues in this whole narrative and story and conversation that I'm not going to get into. I may refer to a couple of things, point out a couple of things, but I'm not going to get into the details of it because I want to stay laser focused on what we're talking about. But just to say that there are some things that are problematic if you are one of those dogged believers in Christianity or in Islam even. Okay? So Jacob, who is the father of the 12, or at least the initial 12, he's the father of the initial 12. The final 12, he is the father of 10 and the grandfather of 2. But we're going to explain that in a moment, okay? And they are as follows. Jacob first marries 2 women. Anybody who knows the story, the Old Testament story of Jacob, knows that he wanted to marry Rachel, and he thought she was the most beautiful, gorgeous, thick, fine thing that he had ever seen. So that he went to her father Laban, and said, "Man, I'll work 7 years if you just let me have her. Ooh, man, I'll work for you for free if you just let me have her." And Laban says, "Okay, deal." Okay. And so he goes in and he starts working. And at the end of the term, when he's supposed to get Rachel, Laban pulls an old switcheroo on him while Jacob's laying there in bed getting ready for the wedding night to consummate the wedding. And it's dark and he can't see well. He slips in his other daughter, Leah, and sends her into Jacob. I told you it was problematic. But remember, women were property back then. That's a whole nother conversation. We've had that before. He sends in Leah Jacob, not knowing, because it's dark and there is no lampstands or anything like that to turn on lights, he just feels another thick woman laying there and says, "Okay, let's do the do," and they do the do. The marriage is consummated, and when the sun comes up, he realizes this is not Rachel. This is her cockeyed sister Leah. I didn't say that. That's in your Bible. Didn't call her cockeyed. It says she got a lazy eye. But that's what it said. That he ends up sleeping with Leah, and so he says he goes. The lady says, "You tricked me, man. You played me." He's like, I know, but I've been trying to pawn Leah off on somebody for the longest. And so, there's a sucker born every minute. I got you. Now, if you want Rachel, you have to put in more time to get Rachel. So he decides to go ahead and put in another 7 so that he can get Rachel. And he does, in this case, get Rachel. And so Jacob now shows favoritism to Rachel because she's the woman that he really wanted. I know that's terrible, huh? I told you there's some things that are problematic in this story that Christians don't really want to address, but I'm just telling you. But he shows favoritism to Rachel because that's the one that he really wanted, and he's just kind of neglectful and treats Leah kind of like, yeah, whatever. She's just the side piece that I really don't even really want. Okay, but I got her, so I got to take care of her. She's my property now. All right. And so it is said that then as a result, some would say this was God, others would say it's karma, reaping what you've sown, or whatever way you want to look at it. But when it came time to bear children, Rachel was barren, but Leah could get pregnant. Leah got pregnant without even trying hard. I mean, he hit it one time. Boom, she was pregnant. Okay. Yo, y'all forgive me for laughing. I'm telling you, it's funny. But anyway, he gets with Leah and she gets pregnant. Okay? In the meantime, Rachel's over here. She's hot because she can't have no children. She's barren. Leah's popping out children like popcorn. And so she has her first. Oh, Lord have mercy. So, see, Yvette, you ain't right. See, you going to make me laugh. I am not going there with you. No, I'm not. So she pops out her first child and she names him Reuben. Literally, the name means see a son. Clear perspective, where he represents clear perspective and clear perception. Okay? Reuben represents clear perspective and clear perception. So the gate that is named Reuben is the gate that is the threshold for clear perception and clear perspective. It gives clarity of sight. She bears a second child and she names it Simeon. Simeon literally means hearing, which corresponds to your intuitive nature. So the gate that is named Simeon is the gate to deeper, intense, intuitive knowing. Faith comes by Simeon, hearing, and hearing by what God says. That ability to be able to discern the voice of God as it speaks from within, without question, without controversy, without doubt, without need of confirmation. You know that you know that you know that it's God because you have entered the gate of Simeon. Hearing. Are y'all hearing me? Okay. Then she gets pregnant a third time. She's had Reuben, which is clarity of perspective and perception. Simeon, which is the increase of your intuitive nature, the hearing. Then she has a third son and names it Levi. Levi literally means attached or joined. It corresponds to the perfect alignment that allows unfettered access. Levi, that tribe, would eventually go on to become the priesthood. And the priesthood were the ones who had access not only to the outer court, but the inner court and the holies of holies. And so the gate that is called the Levi is the gate that gives you perfect alignment, allowing you full, unfettered access into the holiest of holy places containing the knowledge of God. She gets pregnant yet again, fourth child, 4 in a row. And the fourth child, she names Judah. Judah literally means praised or celebrated. This corresponds to the master key that opens the gates of gates, represented as the lion or a king, because praise, worship is one of the keys to the universe, and it is the key that unlocks all gates. That as you enter into his gates with thanksgiving and coming to the courts with praise. Praise and worship, thanksgiving is a key of keys, a master key that unlocks all of the gates. I tell people all the time that when you are entering into your time of prayer and meditation, precede it with praise and worship. And that doesn't mean you got to be falling out and rolling on the floor, kicking, shouting, dancing. It means that you are in a place of a worshipful state of mind and being, a praiseful state of mind and being, whether you are listening to some nice meditative music like what's playing in the background now, or you're listening to something a little more hyped or enthusiastic, but it raises your spiritual vibration and begins to unlock your conscious mind so that it can be penetrated by the light of the glorious knowing, or the light of glory, as it emerges within you and floods your conscious mind. Judah. And so there is a gate that is labeled Judah that represents this key. It is a gate that opens every other gate. And then, okay, yes. And then, after 4 children, and incidentally, if you read the narrative, you'll see that every time Leah has a child and names a child, she is doing so to win the approval of Jacob. But that's a whole nother conversation as well. After she leaves off from bearing children, those 4 children, Rachel over here is just hot. She is pissed to the highest level of pissivity, jealous and mad because ugly Leah is popping out babies left and right. And I can't give Jacob not one child. And now I'm seeing Jacob starting to favor Leah over me. He falling in love with the side chick. So what does she do? Then Rachel then takes her handmaiden and gives her to Jacob and says, here, have sex with her and get her pregnant, because whatever children she gives birth to will be my children. It will be as though I gave birth to them. If you've ever seen The Handmaid's Tale, this is where that came from. That whole HBO show, The Handmaid's Tale, comes from the story of Jacob. Okay? The handmaiden was the slave, yes, of the woman whose handmaiden she was, in this case, Rachel. And Rachel says, take my handmaiden, Bilhah, and sleep with her so that she can bring forth children for me in my place. Now, this is where the 12 tribes came from. Are you hearing me? Problematic if you ascribe to a lot of the Christian teachings, Islamic teachings about sex and sexuality. But that's another conversation. I want to keep going. And so Bilhah, Rachel's handmaiden, begins to have children. She has 2. And the first child she has is a son that she calls Dan. Well, she doesn't call him anything. Rachel names the child because they are Rachel's children, even though Bilhah is the one who carried them and gave birth to them, handmaiden tale. She decides to name the child Dan, which literally means judgment and discernment, corresponding to a heightened sense of direction and knowing. Then she has a second child that Rachel names Naphtali. Naphtali literally means wrestling, which corresponds to the might to overcome one's own inner barriers, to overcome your inner demons. And that's the correct use of the term, because we're not talking about entities and spirits. We're talking about your inner demons are your inner barriers, those old thoughts, ideas, concepts, and beliefs that stand between you and your advancement, your higher self. You are wrestling with yourself. Okay? And Naphtali, there is a gate that is named Naphtali that represents when you enter this gate, you will gain the power to overcome those inner demons, those inner barriers, those inner fights, those enemies. Yes. Those are your real haters, your inner you. That's your real hater, your inner you. You have the power to overcome and break all of those barriers, those obstructions, those obstacles to your advancement, growth, and evolution. Well, the story goes on. And when Leah sees Rachel take her handmaiden and give her to Jacob, Leah says, well, turnabout is fair play. So she gets her handmaiden and gives her to Jacob as well. So two can play at that game. You notice Jacob ain't doing no complaining, is it? Okay, I'm stopping. I'm gonna leave that. Okay, but, yes, but Leah says, "Well, I got a handmaiden too," and so she grabs hold to her handmaiden, who is Zilpah, and gives her to Jacob so that she could produce children as well. But those children would not be the handmaidens, they would be Leah's. And Zilpah gives birth to two children as well. The first child she has, Leah names it Gad, which literally means troop or company. Troop, Troop, or company, corresponding to our conscious awareness of other beings and other life forces. Troop, company, this great cloud of witnesses. This corresponds to our becoming consciously aware of other beings and life forms and life forces across the multiverse throughout every dimension. There is a gate that is named Gad, that as you enter it, you become consciously aware of the great troop company or cloud of witnesses, these spiritual life forces across dimensions, across the multiverse. Then Zilpah gets pregnant again, and Leah names this child Asher. The word Asher, name Asher, literally means happiness. It corresponds to the overwhelming peace and sense of belonging. Let me say that again. It corresponds to overwhelming peace and a sense, an innate, overwhelming sense of belonging. There are many of you that are watching me right now that are a part of this conversation who have struggled in this area of your life for a long time. That feeling disconnected, like you don't know your place in this world, like you don't really fit in. You've been called the black sheep or the outsider or the outcast, or you don't fit here and you don't fit there, and you kind of feel isolated and alone. And so you try to compensate for that by becoming an overachiever or putting up the pretense that I don't care, I'd rather be by myself than be connected with anyone, but still have that sense of emptiness and void within you. There is a gate for you that is called Asher. That conscious space that you walk into and experience a real overwhelming sense of peace with yourself, with this world, with all that is around you, and you have an overwhelming sense of belonging that alleviates all of those fears, insecurities, doubts that you've harbored for so long. Story doesn't end there. After Zilpah gives birth to two other children, then all of a sudden Leah gets pregnant again and has a second set of children. Leah was a fertile somebody. I'm telling you something else here. You hear me? She was dropping them. She had 4, and now she has 3 more. And the second set that Leah gives birth to, the first son, she names him Issachar. Woo! Issachar literally means there is recompense rather, and he will bring reward. In another place in the Old Testament narrative, it is said about the tribe of Issachar that they were those who understood the times and the seasons because they studied the stars and the planets. They were prophetic, keenly prophetic. But the name literally means there is recompense and he will bring great reward. So there is a gate that is called Issachar, a conscious gate. Yes, a gate that leads into a realm of reward, compensation, of prophetic sight, understanding, and revelation. She gives birth to another son, and she names this son Zebulon. Zebulon literally means honored and exalted, an honored and exalted dwelling place. Zebulon literally corresponds to the higher consciousness, the place that Paul describes as being seated together in heavenly places. In a seat of honor and exaltation, in a seat of power, in a seat of infinite ability and capacity, is through the gate of Zebulon, to abide in that higher conscious state of being where you are consciously aware that you are in this world, but more consciously aware that you are not of this world. And you live by laws that supersede the laws of this three-dimensional realm. Then she gets pregnant again, but this time she gives birth to a daughter named Dinah. And because they lived in a misogynistic uh, society at the time, Dinah was considered property and not awarded a tribe. She is the only daughter out of the bunch from Leah. Now that's significant because something happens to her down the road that leads to the replacement of two of the tribes. Finally, after all this time, Rachel, her womb is opened and she gets pregnant. After being barren for all of these years, finally her womb is opened and she gets pregnant. And she gives birth to two children. The first she names Joseph. You're familiar with that name. It literally means adding. This corresponds to the gate of abundance, prosperity, and increase. Joseph, or in the way it's pronounced in Hebrew, is Yusuf because there's no J, like Yusuf, or and Joseph is a type and shadow of Jesus that is to come. But that's a whole nother conversation as well. But he corresponds to abundance, prosperity, and increase. There is a gate called Joseph that as you enter that conscious space, you enter the space that attracts, creates, and generates abundance, prosperity, and increase. And then she gives birth to a second child. Benoni is its original name. But uh, when she gives birth to this child, she names him Benoni out of regret, remorse, bitterness, because she dies soon after the birth. During the childbirth, there's some complication. The child comes out okay, and with her last breath, she calls this child Benoni, which means sadness. And Jacob quickly changes the child's name as Rachel expires, and he changes his name to Benjamin. Benjamin literally means son of my right hand. This corresponds to limitless authority. So he went from sadness and grief to limitless authority and power. And there is a gate in the realm of your higher consciousness, a gate of Benjamin that grants you access to the limitless, infinite, expansive power and authority of the divine God. Okay? That's the original 12. But then Dinah, Leah's daughter, is taken advantage of and raped. She is raped, abused, mistreated, and Dan and Levi have the ability to defend her and choose not to. That's a whole nother conversation. I told you this story is problematic, man, when you look at the details of it. But because they do that, they are excommunicated from the 12 and replaced by the grandfather with two of his grandchildren. Manasseh, who replaces Dan, literally means Elohim or creator. Creator, and it means he who has made me to forget, transmuting the energy of your past. This is what it corresponds to. It's that ability to transmute the energy, the negative energy of your past, creating it a new outcome, circumstance, situation, perspective of it, so that it no longer harms you but serves you. Are you understanding me? Dan, which actually corresponds to Dan, which meant judgment or discernment, because when you are able to transmute the energy of your past and thereby create a more positive perspective and narrative, it then allows your judgment, discernment, and perception to be heightened. So Manasseh replaces Dan, and Joseph replaces Levi, and Levi is now, although elevated to the priesthood, you'll note that Levi is given no inheritance. Levi is totally dependent upon the offerings and the tithe and the giving of all the people of all the other tribes. Their only responsibility is the care of the temple, the priesthood. Are you understanding? So, here are your gates. Reuben, Simeon, Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Gad. I'm sorry, not Dan. Erase that. Reuben, Simeon, Judah, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, and Benjamin. 3 gates are in the east, 3 in the west, 3 in the north, 3 in the south, covering the 4 directional dimensions of the earth, this 3-dimensional world. So they cover the totality of the expanse of the existence of humanity. Okay? The totality of humanity. So you have access through these gates into the expanse that covers, rather, the expanse of all humanity in every direction. Are you understanding? Limitless, boundless, infinite knowing, understanding, revelation, and insight. Now, this city, higher consciousness, not only has 12 gates, but it has 12 foundations, which represent the 12 apostles, which represent the 12 powers of man. How long have I been on? Hour and a half. Woo! Okay. They represent the 12 powers of man. They are also represented by 12 stones that are scattered about in those 12 foundations, which represent 12 other attributes or characteristics available to us as we dwell in that higher consciousness. It is a city that is said to sit upon 4 square, which means that it is solid and equally balanced and unyielding and bold, and it is measured 1,500 by 1,500 by 1,500 miles. The walls are about 40 miles each, made of jasper, which represents tranquility and peace and wholeness. How do I want to? All right. I'm going to stop because I've been on for an hour and a half. And I will deal with the 12 foundations, the 12 apostles, the 12 powers of men, as well as those 12 jewels and what they represent and why they're important in our next conversation, which will probably be Wednesday or maybe tomorrow. Sign up for the text notifications so you'll know. Either it'll be tomorrow or Wednesday, and I'll pick it up and we will deal with those 12 foundations and the 12 stones or the 12 jewels as well. Yeah, I kind of figured that I could feel that it was a lot to process with those 12 gates. And so I didn't want to throw another 12 and then another 12 and then, other information on top of that. Take the time to process that, what you got tonight, and we'll come back tomorrow night or Wednesday night, one of the two, and we'll pick it up and we'll deal with the 12 foundations, which are the 12 apostles, the 12 powers of men. And then we'll also deal with those 12 stones and what they represent as well. Okay? And I want to show you how this not only corresponds to the higher consciousness in the Revelation, but you see this mentioned again and again throughout prophetic scriptures in Isaiah, in Ezekiel, and Zechariah, in Daniel. You see these same symbols being represented again and again and again and again. So maybe we'll do tomorrow night and Wednesday because there's a lot more to cover. So if you haven't done so, if you have not done so, then you need to go ahead and sign up for the free text notification that's scrolling at the bottom of your screen. Follow the instructions so that you can join us in the conversation. Okay? So before I go off, are there any questions at all? Let me go through the comments again. Okay. Is it possible that we could have entered through some of these gates unknowingly? No, not possible at all. These gates are very profound and demonstrative. You will not approach these gates or enter through them without knowing. You will absolutely be aware that you are approaching and entering a gate. That's a good question, though. It's a very good question. Yvette. I love you. Yvette says, so this is one of the many stories of how pettiness came to life. Yes, Lord. I'm telling you, that story right there is the epitome of petty. Petty. Okay? Yes. Any questions at all? Yes, that's right, Amanda. Once you go through a gate, you are awakened. And here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. I was talking to a friend of mine, another colleague of mine who's a pastor there, and he was, just excited about having embraced a certain level of enlightenment, understanding about certain things that I've been telling him and talking to him about for a while. He's like, man, it just makes so much sense to me now. He's like, I can't go back to what I was preaching and teaching before. It's like, I don't even feel right even saying any of that stuff. I'm like, that's because once you've been awakened to truth, you can never go back to the lie. You just absolutely cannot. You would have to be a completely, have your conscience seared with a hot iron and be the most conniving con person in the world to go back and repeat the lies and the untruths once you have been awakened to truth and reality. You can't. Once you enter those gates, once the enlightenment comes, once you poured in this new wine, you can never go back to the old. You just can't. What does awareness of gates access look like? Good question. As I said earlier at the beginning of the teaching, it is something that is achieved through prayerful meditation, whether it's transcendental meditation, mindful meditation, guided meditation, all the other types of mantra meditation. But that most often you are, as you enter that meditative state of visioning, imagining, transit state, a state of a being in a trance, you will see images of lions or dragons or bulls or dogs, or maybe a combination of all of them, as you are beginning to now come to the space where the gates are. And you will sometimes see literal gates that are there in front of you. That's a very good question. Very good question. Do you go through the gates in a chronological order? No. You can actually set your intention to go through the gate that you seek to enter. So you get to decide. Remember who you are. You are the divine reflection and image and likeness of God. You are God in the flesh. So you get to choose what gates you want to enter when you get ready. Set your intention and your focus and go after it. There is no chronological order. That's a very good question. That's a very good question. Any other questions? That's a really good one. Any other questions? Any other questions? I'm looking at the comments now. I've answered that one already. All right. I don't see any other questions popping up. Listen, as I said earlier, you invest in what you value. You invest in what you value. I've spent the better portion of my life doing preaching, ministry, pastoring, um, for, like I said, a large portion of my life. And one thing that I have understood, especially within the latter part of my ministry life, is that a lot of people say they value ministry or teaching or knowledge or revelation and understanding, but they don't act as though they really value it, and they certainly don't value the vessel through which it comes. That's why people get all bent out of shape and upset about preachers and pastors and leaders and anybody else seeming to do well or make any kind of money or do anything, have any kind of prosperity in their life, because they begrudge them because, well, in many cases, rightfully so, because some are definitely crooked and run games and are manipulating and con men and con women and all that other kind of stuff. But when you have people who are genuine teachers, who are honored to serve, who are servants that are set to teach and give and demonstrate and articulate and enlighten, then if you value that teaching and you value the vessel, the teacher, then you should be willing to invest in that teaching and the teacher. I've spent a better portion of my life doing pastoring and ministering and preaching, and been a part of a system where you almost had to beg, borrow, plead, and some of everything else just to get people to give. And certainly if you wanted them to support you, it looked like you couldn't really say anything, because people would think, oh, you were just after their money, that you were greedy, that you were trying to get over, or anything else like that, when you genuinely just wanted to help people, but you also genuinely had needs as well that needed to be met. And I promised myself after I got out of this last assignment that would never be the case again with me. I will not go where I'm tolerated. I'll go where I'm celebrated and where people value what I have to offer. And so I'm saying to those of you who are watching, if you value the teaching that I give you and value me as a vessel, then I need you to demonstrate your value by your giving. I'm not telling you what to give, what not to give. No, I need 7 people to give $100, this many people to give that many people to give this. I just need you to demonstrate how much you value this teaching and me as a vessel, a servant. Demonstrate that by way of your giving. You can afford, make room for, make allowances for, make space for whatever you choose. Demonstrate that and take advantage of the honor and the privilege that you have to be able to give. I'm asking you to do that tonight. You can use any of the means that are on your screen. You know this by now. You can use our Cashapp, Zelle, or PayPal. And whatever you decide to give, it will be reflective of how much you value me and you value the teaching that I'm giving you. There are some of you that tune in regularly and never contribute anything. That's just a fact. And you should. You absolutely should. Because clearly you see the value in it. That's why you keep tuning in. So you should take advantage of the privilege to give and to demonstrate your value of what you're receiving. The others who do so sporadically, you should afford the opportunity to give. Make space for the opportunity to give. Just like you plan to do other things, plan to give. You can go ahead and take advantage of that opportunity right now. Use your phone and you can Zelle, PayPal, or Cashapp right now before I go off the air or while I'm still yet speaking. Do that now. Demonstrate your love, concern, and support for this movement and for me as your teacher, as a vessel that's being used to serve you. It is absolutely my honor. Now listen, whether you give or not, I'm going to keep teaching. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep doing. I'm just not going to neglect telling you a truth and exposing you to that level of truth as well as everything else that I'm teaching. All right. Have a fantastic night. I'll see you back here tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Y'all don't drag on me. Come on in at the very beginning so that we can have more time to cover as much as we possibly can. And we'll pick up right where we left off. Okay? We'll pick up right where we left off. All right. Have a great night, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you for tuning in. And be sure to catch us every Sunday at 7 p.m. for empowerment.
That we are a unique expression.
Every Thursday at 7 p.m. for momentum.
The creation of God and the God who created him.
Once again, be sure to follow us on all social media platforms. And we'll see you next time.